Link TV, connecting you to the world. Link TV is viewer supported. Watch more at linktv.org.
Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
Transitional Council announces full control of Bani Walid. Yemen's Saleh warns of coup as security forces continue to open fire on protesters. And Syrian regime ignores calls to stop the killings. Mosaic World News from the Middle East begins now. Pro-Muammar al-Gaddafi TV Arai reported that his son, Khamis Gaddafi, was killed in battle southeast of the Libyan capital, Tripoli, nearly 3 weeks ago. The Syrian-based TV channel said that Khamis was killed in a battle against fighters of the Libyan National Transitional Council in the city of Tarhuna, located 90 kilometers southeast of Tripoli. Meanwhile, in Libya, the National Transitional Council announced its full control over Bani Walid, one of Colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi's final strongholds, located approximately 170 kilometers southeast of Tripoli. The council's fighters considered it a major victory after besieging the city for a month. However, parallel to this victory is a near deadlock in the fight for Sirte, where battles are still ongoing and the city is not yet in the Revolutionaries' control.
غال هو الثمن المدفوع للسيطرة على سرت. عدد القتلى في تزايد في ظل.
The price is high for taking over Sirte. The death toll is on the rise as the fighting has been ongoing for 4 weeks between the revolutionaries and Gaddafi's battalions. The battles are concentrated in central Sirte, where the revolutionaries are besieging the battalion's fighters, as well as several residents caught in between. The NTC forces are intensifying their shelling of neighbourhood number 2 and Dollar neighbourhood, but are facing difficulties advancing due to the gunfire of professional snipers in Gaddafi's forces, according to NTC military commanders.
Some remnants of Gaddafi's battalions are entrenched in a small square of neighborhood number 2. God willing, our Lord will enable us to defeat them today or tomorrow. God willing.
إلى بني وليد المعقل الآخر للقذافي ما زال قوات المجلس تقوم بعمليات.
In Bani Walid, another Gaddafi stronghold, NTC forces are still conducting a broad combing operation after they announced full control of the city. This comes after heavy artillery shelling and ground advances on the northern and southern front lines. Mustafa Al-Manshawi, BBC.
افتتح وزير الخارجية البريطاني ويليام هيغ سفارة بلده في طرابلس بصورة رسمية.
British Foreign Minister William Hague inaugurated the British Embassy in Tripoli and announced John Jenkins as the new ambassador to Libya. This comes during Hague's short visit to the Libyan capital, during which he held talks with the head of the National Transitional Council, Mustafa Abdul Jalil. Hague said it is important to merge the NTC militias and the National Provisional Government, which will be formed when the country is liberated. Hague admitted that the NTC has committed several violations and asserted he would discuss the subject with leaders of the council.
أصوات الرصاص ظلت تدوي في ليل العاصمة اليمنية صنعاء وتنقلت الاشتباكات.
The sound of gunfire reverberated throughout the night across the Yemeni capital Sana'a as street clashes and shelling spread from one neighborhood to another. 8 people were killed and 27 others were wounded in the confrontations. Among the dead was Sheikh Saleh Hamoud bin Aziz, one of the tribal leaders loyal to President Ali Abdullah Saleh. The Yemeni defense minister accused Sheikh al-Ahmar's loyalists of killing bin Aziz by shelling his home in the city of Sufan, north of Sana'a. Medical sources reported that 10 shells hit various areas of Change Square, killing 4 protesters. In addition, 2 people were killed in fierce battles that erupted erupted in the Hasaba neighborhood between the Yemeni president's forces and armed fighters loyal to Sheikh al-Ahmar. Also in Hasaba, a civilian was killed during the shelling of his home amid the bloodshed and gunfire waged by security forces against the youth of change. Yemeni President Ali Abdullah accused Al-Qaeda and the Muslim Brotherhood of instigating the violence in Yemen, saying that the protests are not peaceful because among the protesters are defected army troops. Abdurrahman al-Shumari reports from Sana'a.
Residents spent the night and woke up to the sound of gunfire in Sana'a. The list of those dead and injured among the youths of change is very long. With each step they take towards Zubaria Street and the front line separating them from government forces, the youths of change suffer a new casualty toll. Security forces deployed armed groups disguised as civilians and snipers on building rooftops and on both sides of the street.
They launched the attack as soon as the march began. We received 4 martyrs in the first 10 minutes. Then more martyrs and injured followed. The number of martyrs so far stands at 5. Most injuries were serious. More than 50 people were injured by the heavy gunfire.
Despite the heavy gunfire and the use of light and moderate weapons, the protesters were able to march in Zubaria Street and return to Change Square amid chants calling for freedom and a new Yemen. On the other front, the Hasaba neighborhood turned into a war zone, where intermittent clashes erupted between pro- and anti-regime armed tribal groups.
The international community has an ethical, humanitarian, and legal responsibility, as mandated by international laws and UN charters, to intervene and protect the citizens who are being killed every day.
It's an explosive situation with more landmines and skulls as victims continue to fall, especially in absence of a political settlement that could spare the country further conflict and destruction. The escalation of peaceful protests by the youths of change is being met by a security escalation that is claiming dozens of lives and injuring dozens of others, amid pessimism of what is coming next. Abdurrahman al-Shumari, Dubai TV, Sana'a.
Less than 24 hours after the Arab League's decision on Syria, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia commended the Arab position, demanding an immediate end to the violence. Meanwhile, the UN Secretary General called on the Syrian president to immediately stop the killing of civilians and to accept an international investigation into human rights violations.
These calls did not generate any response from the Syrian regime, as 16 people were reportedly killed today by the gunfire of the regime's security and military forces. In addition, 10 people died in Homs last night as the Syrian delegate gave a speech at the headquarters of the Arab League.
Every day, Syrian citizens take to the street revolting against injustice and demanding their right to life. Their ruler responds with brutal violence and the kind of repression that he has never directed against his enemies. The excessive force of Assad's battalions is not aiding the regime in its confrontation with the people who insist on defending their rights until gaining them. And after the revolution entered its 8th month, the people are determined to achieve their demands of freedom, democracy, and the downfall of the regime. Thousands took to the street in many cities and towns in massive demonstrations in what the Syrian opposition called the Monday of the Fulfillment to Duma. These videos were posted online by activists. They show a mass women's night protest in Da'en in the south of the country, during which the women chanted anti-regime slogans. In addition, during the funeral procession of 3 victims who died by the gunfire of the battalions in the neighborhood of al-Khalidia and Homs, mourners were subjected to heavy gunfire by the regime's forces, leading to a number of injuries. According to the revolution's coordination committees, thousands also came out in the town of Granada in the countryside of Homs for the funeral of an activist who was tortured to death after his arrest by Assad's battalions. The regime continues to brutally kill, repress, and deceive in an attempt to end the peaceful popular mobilization. In this context, activists posted photos online showing the heavy deployment of Assad's battalions on squares and streets and the arrest of passers-by. Activists said at least 10 civilians were killed by Assad's battalions during the speech of the Syrian ambassador at the headquarters of the Arab League in Cairo, considering it a clear indication of the regime's refusal to stop the killing and its disregard for the regional and international community's call to end the violence. In addition, a number of Syrian citizens were killed in the eastern Deir az-Zur, Idlib's Khan Sheikhoun, and al-Zabadani in the Damascus countryside. The latter was stormed by Assad's battalions, composed of soldiers and Shabiha, hours after clashes erupted between government forces and army defectors. On the international front, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon called on Syrian President Bashar al-Assad to immediately stop the killing of civilians and to accept an international investigation into human rights violations. French Foreign Ministry spokesman Bernard Valero said Assad's formation of a committee tasked with drafting a constitution lacks any credibility, since the regime continued the killing, imprisonment, and torture on a daily basis. The French spokesman expressed hope that the Arab League will take courageous decisions that will add pressure on Syrian authorities in anticipation of ending the bloody crackdown and encouraging political transition in the country.
We are now on the eve of the landmark prisoner exchange deal that will bring home kidnapped IDF soldier Gilad Shalit and free some 477 convicted terrorists. The High Court is at this hour in the midst of hearing appeals of families of terror victims pleading for a delay in the prisoner exchange deal. IBA's Ariel Reshef was in the courtroom. She joins me now in the studio. Ariel, this had to be an emotionally charged day at the High Court.
Yes, Yochanan, it absolutely was. The courtroom was filled with families who have lost loved ones to terror attacks, seeking a delay in the Shalit deal in order to allow more time to review the list of Palestinian prisoners set to be freed. The families had been granted 48 hours to look over the list and to submit specific appeals. Noam Shalit, the father of Gilad Shalit, also appeared in court today to urge the justices not to make adjustments to the agreement. Ahead of the petitions, Shalit submitted his family's response, which claimed that any change to the existing deal could put Gilad's life in danger. Shalit sat in the front row with terror victims' families filling the benches behind him. Before the proceedings got underway, one family member angrily called for Shalit to hang a black flag over his home in Mitzpeh Hilah. The man shouted, "Look the crowd in the eye and admit that your happiness also deepens our misery." Mayor Indoor, the head of the Almagor Terror Victims Association, made an impassioned plea on behalf of the families and presented 4 petitions to the justices. There was also a tearful testimony from many of the different family members who beseeched the High Court not to allow the government's decision to be implemented. Supreme Court President Dorit Banish empathized with the families, saying that releasing prisoners is a difficult dilemma, but that it falls within the jurisdiction of the defense establishment and government and not the High Court. She also said that according to a ruling in a previous appeal, the families were able to request to see that list of prisoners before it was made public, and that this should have given them more than 48 hours to appeal. That comment elicited shouts from many in the crowd who claimed that they were unaware that this was even an option. Now, some family members who attended the proceedings expressed adamant opposition to the Shalit deal, while others expressed their support for the Shalit family.
The terrorist that killed my son does not appear in this list, but I am very afraid, and my nights are not nights, and I'm afraid that he will appear in the next list of killers. And I'm also afraid that even if he will not appear in the next list, he might appear in a list that when the other soldier or citizen will be kidnapped, he might appear in this list.
We came to support Noam Naviva. We are 5 years with them. At the beginning, in the tent, before they came to Jerusalem, and then every week, twice in the government meeting and in the tent in the evening. We are here to say that we are supporting them and want to help them in their style.
I watched Aviva Shalit and I was so happy to see the smile on her face. And I knew that David, if he had been alive, would have been there to support the family. And I realized that he's not coming back. And there are all these mixed feelings, but I'm so convinced that we have to free prisoners. It's the beginning of a way to go towards reconciliation.
What do you have to say to the Shalit family today?
That the only thing that's good about this deal is that Gilad Shalit will see them again. But that's a personal gain for them. For most people, it is a horrible tragedy because many people, hundreds and hundreds, as we know from other deals that were made before, are going to feel the repercussion of this horrible deal.
Now, at this hour, no ruling has been handed down, but senior legal analysts predict that the High Court will uphold the government's decision to release 1,027 Palestinian prisoners in exchange for Gilad Shalit. Yochanan.
Ariel, thanks for that report.
Sure.
The IDF and police are now implementing procedures designed to facilitate tomorrow's staged prisoner exchange. It'll commence early in the morning and should be completed during the afternoon. IBA's Aaron Viner takes us step by step at how the operation is expected to be carried out.
Tomorrow's historic exchange deal will begin near the Gaza border with Egypt after an international Red Cross or Egyptian intelligence official has met with abducted IDF soldier Gilad Shalit in the early morning hours. Israel will then release 27 female Palestinian prisoners to their homes in the West Bank and Gaza. 2 will be taken to Egypt for deportation to a third country. During the next phase, Gilad Shalit will be transferred into a closed military zone in Egypt, where he is expected to spend just minutes before returning overland to Israel. Shalit's arrival on Israeli soil is expected to be confirmed at around 11 a.m. when he will be taken to a nearby IDF base, where he will be given his own cell phone to call his family before undergoing an initial medical examination administered by the Army's Chief Medical Officer, Brigadier General Itzik Kreis. The first wave of 477 male Palestinian prisoners will then be transferred to Egypt for release. 163 of the group will be exiled to Gaza, and 40 others will reportedly be deported to Turkey, Syria, or Qatar. Next, Shalit will be flown by helicopter to the Tel Nof air base near Rehovot, where the IDF is expected to release the first photographs of Israel's abducted soldier to the public. He will also undergo a more extensive medical examination. In a brief reception, Shalit will be officially welcomed home by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister Ehud Barak, and IDF Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Benny Gantz, who will accompany Staff Sergeant Shalit as he reunites with his family at the airbase. If all goes according to plan, in the final phase of the exchange deal, Gilad and the Shalit family will be flown by IDF helicopter to their home in Mitzpeh Chila by Tuesday afternoon. This is Aaron Viner for IBA News.
أكد المعارض البحريني حسن مشيمع خلال اتصال مع عائلته أنه تلقى 3 جرعات مريبة.
Bahraini opposition figure Hassan Mushaima confirmed in a phone call with his family that he received 3 suspicious doses of medication while blindfolded. He did not know what the medicine was nor what it contained. In a phone call with Al-Alam, his son Mohammed Mushaima expressed fear about his father's fate, especially as authorities refused to give him his medical test results.
Since the Myanmar government has failed to quell the popular protest over the last several months, it appears the Bahraini authorities are trying a new approach, targeting opposition figures. Prominent dissident Hassan Mushaima's family expressed fear that the authorities may resort to liquidating him and other prominent opposition figures in detention, especially after Mushaima confirmed to his family that he was given questionable medication in prison while blindfolded, knowing neither the nature nor the contents of the medicine.
They've been giving him this medication for 4 months, after these 2 suspicious doses. The doctor told him he still had the disease. This conflicts with the medical report from the doctor who treated him in London, who said he had completely recovered.
Coinciding with these developments, members of the regime backed by Saudi occupation forces continued their repressive campaign to clamp down on freedoms and silence the voices calling for freedom and justice. Residents of Nuadrat organized a peaceful march to condemn the continuing arrest of political activists. The demonstration did not escape the crackdown by security forces, which shut down the main entrance to the region, then attacked and dispersed protesters using various weapons, including toxic gas bombs. In the neighboring Akkar region, the scene was even uglier and more horrific. Members of the regime launched a campaign to raid houses and arrest civilians in a way that can be described as barbarian and savage. The authorities' continual repression and terrorization did not weaken the fortitude of the Bahraini people, who are determined to complete their path, which began months ago with peaceful marches and protests. They affirm their rightful demands and condemn the regime and its repressive policy against the Bahraini people.
A couple of news pieces on Jordan. Jordan's prime minister has resigned following months of public demonstrations against his government. Maruf Bakhit's government has been accused of corruption and failing to meet growing demands for reform. On Sunday, the majority of lawmakers urged King Abdullah to sack him. Government sources say the king has accepted the premier's resignation. He is now named deputy chief of the International Court of Justice on al-Khazaneh as the new head of government. The king has also appointed a new intelligence chief. Jordan has been the scene of demonstrations since the start of the year, demanding sweeping economic and political reforms. The protesters say the changes promised by the king are not enough. They want a constitutional monarchy to curb the king's powers. Meanwhile, Jordan's tribal leaders have warned King Abdullah II against interfering in tribal affairs.
إلى الملك عبد الله الثاني نداء صريحا أن لا تتدثر بالعشائر وتلعب في ورقة العشائر. ورقة العشائر ورقة خطيرة، إن دخلت فيها ما بنطلع حلويا. أنت ما راح تخرج معنا، لا أنت ولا المجموعة اللي معك. حذاري حذاري. أنت جبت لي صخر عندك يصيحوا.
Dozens of tribes have said in a joint statement that the people around the king do not have the interests of the Jordanian people in mind. The tribal leaders have long targeted the cabinet members, accusing them of corruption. The warning from the tribal leaders comes only a day before the resignation of the prime minister. On Saturday, government forces attacked a tribal pro-reform rally, leaving several injured. Earlier this year, the major tribes accused the king's wife, Queen Rania, of corruption. In Jordan, criticism of the royal family is punishable by a 3-year prison sentence. Kenya has sent hundreds of troops deep into Somalia, one day after Nairobi declared war against local al-Shebab fighters. The heavily armed Kenyan troops, backed by aerial bombings, took up positions in Somalia after crossing about 100 kilometers into southern regions. Nairobi accuses the local fighters of kidnapping foreigners, including aid workers. Al-Shebab has warned Nairobi of striking back. The group says if Nairobi does not stop the aggression on Somali soil, it will face the consequences inside Kenya.
The ministers of tourism and information are preoccupied with competition for the new 7 wonders of the world. A meeting was convened with media networks to campaign for more votes for the Jeita Grotto.
The Jeita Grotto is competing with 27 other sites in the new 7 Wonders of the World competition, which has entered its final phase. Jeita has gone through a number of rounds to reach the final phase of the competition. The competition began in 2008, when the Grotto was chosen to compete with over 260 sites throughout the world. 77 sites made it through the second phase, including the Jeita Grotto. The site has overcome tough competition through the contest and was finally chosen as one of the 28 sites to contend in the final phase. The voting will end on November 11th. At a meeting held by Minister of Tourism Fadi Aboud and Minister of Information Walid al-Dawouk with representatives from media organizations, they urged everyone to vote for the Jeita Grotto.
I would like to urge everyone again to participate in the campaign to support the vote. We call on all sectors of Lebanese society, from media networks to civil organizations and associations, from schools and universities to the private and public sectors, to all Lebanese citizens around the world, to fulfill this national duty.
التصويت مفتوح عبر الموقع الإلكتروني www.news7.
Voting is accessible online at news7wonders.com, and the glass hall at the Ministry of Tourism will also be open for voting. It is worth noting that according to the website, the Jeita Grotto is currently in 18th place among the finalists.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible by grants from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Wincoat Foundation, the Firedoll Foundation, and by support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news, read our blog, get transcripts of past shows, and more at linktv.org/mosaic.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs, programs which connect you to the world.